I'm Kristen Andre, founder and chief strategist of Andre Consulting Group. I founded my company almost 10 years ago because I love helping people not only succeed, but thrive in their careers and their lives. So many times I meet amazing people who have so much more potential than what they're utilizing. As I engage with them, there seems to be a common theme: the limits they place on themselves. Throughout this podcast series, we're going to visit some incredible people who have created more intentional lives for themselves, those who've had that no limits moment where they chose to grow and they put things in motion to help them do so. We will focus on how you can break through limits. We will equip you with strategies to help you lead a more intentional life, and we will have a lot of fun along the way. So let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the No Limits with Kristen Andre podcast. We are here today with Dana Barrett, who is a TV and radio show host of the Dana Barrett Show. Super excited to have her here today. So welcome to the show, Dana.
Why, thank you.
Why, you're welcome. Well, so you've been in radio and TV for quite some time.
So I've been in media, I would say, full-time-ish now since about 2010, 2011,
Okay.
2011.
And you had
like
a pretty good entrepreneurial and career track before then.
So my career before 2011 was pretty varied. Most of it was in corporate, most of it was in IT. Okay. Some corporate for quite some time. I was in corporate, sort of climbing the ladder, then entrepreneurial. And then I had a couple of other entrepreneurial endeavors that were not IT related.
Okay. So what made you want to branch into the spotlight, move into the radio world?
I always wanted to do something in media and entertainment. I was like the little kid who was singing into the hairbrush, like performing for the family whenever possible.
Can you sing though?
Oh, not at all.
Me either. Terrible.
I'm a terrible singer. I learned that early on.
Yep.
I liked the idea of it, but in practice, no actual talent there.
Same. Yeah.
Although I've always said I think I actually have a decent voice, but I just can't carry a tune. So
my ex-husband told me, he's a musician by background. He told me one time I was singing, loved to sing all the time. He said that my voice was like nothing you've ever heard.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty remarkable.
We just went to a show the other day and we said, afterwards, wow, that show was amazing.
Yes.
It wasn't a compliment.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So since you found out you were not going to be Beyonce.
Right. So I was always raised and taught to be practical, and that careers in media and entertainment and being an actor and those kind of things weren't practical, and that's not what you do. My parents got divorced when I was young, and my mother was always like, you don't want to depend on a man to take care of you. You need to have a business career, make your own money, go be practical. And so, I have a degree in business essentially, and I actually have a degree in hospitality administration of all things. And then, throughout, that's the way I felt like all that other stuff, acting and theater and media and entertainment, anything in that was supposed to just be a hobby. You weren't supposed to do that for your career. So throughout a good bit of my career, I treated it that way. But I knew probably in my early 20s that I wanted to do something in this world. So I always did two jobs, one for love and one for money. Almost always. From my early 20s on, I did. They didn't call it a side hustle back then.
Yep.
Let's not.
You were ahead of your time.
Let's not age me here. Yep. But yes. So I always had a little side job, whether it was, and I started in radio actually 20 something years ago. On the side, I got a job answering phones at a radio station. Then I went to my corporate job.
Okay.
So I went early in the morning, answered the phones, and then went to my corporate job. And then eventually I got on the air as a traffic reporter 20 years ago, and did that for a little while until I figured out that is
here in Atlanta.
Yeah, here in Atlanta.
Well, because that's a full-time job being a traffic reporter.
Well, there are part-time jobs, and I was doing it part-time, mostly on Sundays when there was no traffic. But which was funny because I just made it up. But
that's awesome.
Sorry, a little secret: traffic reporters on Sunday are making stuff up.
They don't know where they are
because they're not in the helicopter.
No, that's true.
Now it's easier because there's Waze and all that. But back then, I just would say, there's a sunshine slowdown on I-20 heading out to Six Flags this morning. If you're headed out there, please be careful. It was a total lie. I didn't know if there was a sunshine slowdown. I made that up.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's funny. But all right, so what I think is kind of cool is you always knew you wanted to do this. I mean, how many people do you think out there get steered away? Like you said, whether it's the comment your mom made or somebody that, I had a neighbor growing up that I thought, an orthopedic surgeon, that's so cool. And he's like, well, I don't know if I'd do that. That's a lot of school. And it kind of made me pause. where I was like, it could have been a really cool career.
I think that happens a lot. And I'm just going
too.
to throw this out there. I think it might happen to women more than men. And I think it's partly because, I'm sure it's some of the unconscious bias, but I think
Sure.
it's partly because we tend to be less confident to begin with. So if somebody takes a little bit of the wind out of our sails,
Yep.
I think then the sail just goes down. And
Right.
and so, yeah, I think I didn't always know I wanted to do this exact thing. I just knew I wanted to do something in this arena.
Got it.
But it took a little while to figure out exactly
Yeah.
what that looked like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now that you're doing it,
Yeah.
loving it?
I do love radio. I love television too, but radio is really my first love. I would
Okay.
like to be doing both. I mean, I'm somewhere in the middle of my climb.
Right.
You know,
We still have time left. Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's hope. Fingers crossed. I'm not all the way where I want to be, but if I could have my druthers, is druthers a word?
I think it's word. I'd
Okay,
have to Google.
we're going with that.
We can go with a Google, but yeah.
I would like to be doing radio and television, but television is much more particular.
Right.
You have to look a certain way. You don't.
Oh, yeah.
You're not supposed to make mistakes. I mean, the beauty of podcasting and radio and all of that is that being authentic and making mistakes is
Yep.
part of the charm, I
Yep.
think. And
Unless they're joining us on live stream, which, is still nerve-wracking. TV's tough, though. It's
Right,
a tough fun. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
right. I mean, we have cameras here, and so
Yep.
it is a little different, but it's still like real
Right.
TV. And it's nowadays the blend.
Yeah.
It's such a mix of what's real and what's not real.
Right.
Because there's cameras everywhere. Everyone's got a camera on their phone.
Yeah.
But when I hosted Tech Edge on 11 Alive, there's a huge camera crew standing around. There's teleprompter. There's producers. There's lighting guys.
Yeah.
They only have a certain amount of time to tape the show, and so you better get it done and done right. And they try to do it live to tape, so they try not to do multiple takes.
Yeah.
And so it's just very different. You go through hair and makeup. It's a very different scenario than just sort of flipping on cameras and doing live stream.
Right.
And so while I enjoy that, and it actually makes your career grow even faster.
Sure.
I mean,
Visible.
that made my career go way up.
Yep.
Radio is fun.
It is fun. I listen because I get to listen to your show in the morning on the way in, and or sitting at home while I'm doing some work. But it's here's what I think is kind of cool about you and your show is I feel like you're very authentic. I don't know if it was just because years ago you'd hear the radio and they all had that radio announcer voice, and you're one of my favorite topics to hear you talk about. I don't know if you say it as much anymore. You used to always talk about the lying liars who lie, and you will call out people when they're not good.
Yeah.
And I just don't think we get enough of that in the world today. I mean, on Facebook you get people calling out people, but that's non-factual. What I think is kind of neat about you is you actually do your homework.
Yeah.
I mean, some mornings I'm sitting there going, where in the heck did she hear this news story
I read a
from?
lot of news.
You'd have to.
Yeah,
You'd
I
have
do.
to.
But it's funny because I don't call it out as much. I haven't called it out as much this year because most of it this year is under the political.
They are calling themselves out.
Well,
Yep.
it's all the political. I tried to do it. I tried to stay only in the business arena, calling out like the Wells Fargos and Volkswagens and people like that.
Sure.
Because I just tried to stay away from the politicians because they all lie and it's boring after a while. It's like that's all they do.
Yeah.
And so this year, that's why I haven't said it as much. But when it happens, boy, I still enjoy it.
I can't
still
do
pull
it.
out that
I
soapbox.
know. I love it. I love it. I can't do political news. I don't have the stomach for it.
It's hard.
So,
I mean, there's a lot to take in.
Business news is really neat. So, I mean, what do you think people in the business world, what are their biggest challenges and limits and things that you see on them right now? What's keeping people from really hitting that next level in business?
Well, I think, I think to your point, other people discourage us. I mean, societally, we're sort of not encouraged, I think, to go for it. We're encouraged to be safe.
Right.
I was reading something the other day that was talking about, I think it was the 4-hour work week, sort of talking about why retirement is not the dream. But for a lot of people, that's what we've been raised to think. We have these formulaic lives that we're meant to live, right? You go to high school, then you go to college, or that's what the dream is. And then when you graduate, you go get the corporate job, you climb the ladder, and then you retire. And that's when you get to be happy, you know? And I think that's what a lot of people think. So they keep the secure job, even though it doesn't make them happy, because they're trying to follow the plan. That's what their parents expect and their spouses expect and their church expects and their friends. And so they don't want to, it's hard to say. I mean, listen, when I first started calling myself a TV and radio host, it made me nervous because I wasn't actually one yet. I just knew that's what I was going to be and what I was going to do. And in order to get it, I had to put it out there.
Yeah.
And so, but saying it, I was like, I'm a TV and radio host.
But
I want to be like Oprah.
I feel like that's the generation we were raised in. Like you said, your parents put this in your head and school, and it was expected. And nowadays, we both have kids in their 20s or almost 20s, and they just don't think the same.
No.
I feel like nowadays retirement's a foreign concept to a lot of people in their 20s. I have a financial background, and when I was still working in finance, our age, we always talked about retirement. The 20s and 30-year-olds now, it's not. They don't picture retirement the same way we did.
Well, but how many of our parents are experiencing retirement and they hate it?
Yeah, they're bored.
Like, exactly.
They're bored.
So I don't want that. I want to live now. I want to enjoy now.
I think, and we weren't taught that. For some reason, I feel like our kids are going to teach us that. That's the generation where they're, I feel like we put more limits on ourselves. We call the podcast No Limits, and I feel like the kids behind us are probably going, yeah, of course not.
Yeah.
Of course there's no limits. But it's interesting to see what they come up with.
I also think I think the other thing, to answer your earlier question about what are the challenges people are having is sort of growing to their best, I guess, right? I think some of it also is just not being willing to really look your fears in the face and say, like, that's a dumb fear. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen if that tragic thing happens? If I lose that job, or I don't get this account, or I don't make this phone call, or I do make this phone call, what's the worst thing that could happen? And that's I am super guilty of that. I build fears up in my head into some crazy thing, and I get all kind of nervous anxiety in my stomach. I don't want to make a phone call or ask somebody for something. And then when I do it, I'm like, oh, that was easy.
No big deal.
Right. Yeah. Why did I build that up into such a big nightmare?
Exactly. And I feel like that's a big point of conversation. So we're definitely going to continue that. So after this, we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about fears and how to overcome fears. So we'll see you in just a bit. Everyone, check out my podcast, No Limits with Kristen Andre, on Tuesday nights at 7:30. We will tackle the things holding you back and the limits you set on yourself, and equip you with some strategies to lead more intentional lives. Podcast launches every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. on Facebook.com/Andre Group. That's Facebook.com/ANDREE Group. We'll see you there. Welcome back, everyone, to the No Limits with Kristen Andre podcast. We are talking with radio and television host Dana Barrett, host of the Dana Barrett Show. And before the break, we were talking about fear and how fear gets in the way of our decisions and advancing in our career and everything. So if you think back to back when we started in our careers, 5-10 years ago or so.
I don't remember that, honey. I'm too old.
Back when the whippersnappers were still in short pants. So what were the biggest fears you had to overcome?
In the beginning?
Yeah, in the beginning.
Man, I was so mired down early on. I don't know if I really had a ton of fears at that time. In the beginning of my career, I thought I was just climbing the ladder and this is just how it was going to go.
Did the fears get worse as you advanced?
I think what has held me back from a fear perspective is not asking for enough, being afraid to ask for more money, for a bigger title, for what I deserve. I hate that word, but for what I've earned, maybe is a better way to say it, or what I'm worth, maybe is an even better way. And I think that's where fear came in for me. It's like, well, I'm here and this is working and I want to raise and maybe I should ask for it. And I'd bitch and moan to all my friends, but then I wouldn't actually go make the ask.
Do it.
Or I would do it in this way that was like, hey, I don't want to bother you, but if you just had 1 minute, if I could please. And, I kind of think that maybe, and it wasn't
the right way.
It was
all right.
weak.
So let me play the gender card. Was that a female thing?
I think to some extent,
because I see that more with, my private coaching clients, but guys and girls. I have both male and female. I deal with that. I definitely have some of the males I deal with, but I deal with that a lot more with my female clients than I do my male clients. Asking for what, like definitively asking. I call it wishy-washy language. Maybe could I possibly, if it's okay?
Yeah.
Like I need them to get that out of their verbiage.
Right. I learned that more recently, but I think I did a lot of that, I think, coming up. And that's part of how we were raised.
Yeah.
To be polite and sweet. And I was never that polite or sweet, but
I don't think I am either.
But I did sort of have that fear a little bit. And I think part of it also, and I think this probably happens to a lot of people, if you have great managers and great mentors and great bosses, you are sort of less likely to find yourself in that situation.
Right.
But I had people along the way who I thought I did everything right, asked for it, got up my nerve, got in there, asked for what I needed, and was told no.
Yep.
And so then that kind of teaches you that it doesn't work.
Right.
And then the next time it's even harder. And I think that happens to men and women.
Right.
And so then you're sort of like, well, now I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to do.
Yeah. And I agree with you completely, because if we're not taught it, it is a learned thing. We have to learn it, and that takes time, and it takes trial and error. And a lot of times if we mess up the first time, we're like, oh, that didn't work out. Maybe I should just wait. So it's just kind of going after it. But the thing with fear is just taking a step.
Yeah.
And I feel that a lot of times people, the first step is the hardest. So sometimes I just want to, I tell my clients all the time, as part of my job is to, pat you on the back when you do good, but the bigger part is to dust you off and shove you back out the door when you get kicked in the teeth. And that's what I feel like most people in business need these days.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the baby steps method.
Yeah.
And so, for example, one of the things I know that I've been afraid to do is price myself too high, whether it's for speaking engagements or sponsors coming onto my show or whatever it is.
Right.
And so people will say, you can charge a lot more, Dana. You should be charging more.
Sure.
So one, you have to get comfortable with, if you ask for more and they say no, you don't need the job, or you don't need that gig, or
not
whatever
all
it is.
business is good business.
Right.
Yep.
And number two, I can't make myself go straight to the higher number. So I just know that about myself.
Baby
and so,
steps.
right. So I creep up. So sorry if I've given you a bid. Probably didn't match the other person's bid, because,
No, it's okay.
I do tend to creep up with each. And then when I get success, I'm like, well, first of all, they said yes to that immediately. I should have gone higher.
Right.
But that teaches you that, okay, that number works. And then I can maybe go a little higher and then a little higher.
Right. And I had that happen. I remember I do a lot of speaking. And when I first started speaking and charging for speaking, some of the corporations, I remember, and this is etched in my head, it's probably 15 years ago, that I'd given them a quote. They'd said, we want to have you come in, speak at this conference. It was a very large conference. And they said, what is your fee? And I told them, and they're like, oh, okay, that's less than we thought it would be. And immediately I was like, oh, I probably could have charged double. My fees have raised since then, but I think it was just, had I asked for more, I would have gotten more.
Yeah.
They approached me. They wanted me to come, and I was like, oh, here's what it is. I felt like they were kind of behind the scenes going, man,
she's a bargain.
She's cheap. We're gonna get, not cheap, of course, a bargain, but
Yeah.
I feel that, again, I don't mean to keep going back to the female thing, but we do that more often. And I feel that we've got an opportunity as professional people, professional women, to really start claiming some power and just going after what we know we can do, what we know we're capable of.
Yeah, and I think asking for help in general, whether it's more money, a promotion, a new client, like asking for business, asking for advice, any of that. Maybe advice is the easiest one, but I have trouble with that. I literally said I had phonophobia. Like, I'm afraid to pick up the phone.
Yep.
And I had to get over it. And especially in the last month or so, I really had to get over it. And you know what? It's been fine.
You have to ask. You're never going to get anything if you don't ask. I have a lot of salespeople in my client base, and they're scared of the phone. I'm like, the phone is not going to just ring itself. You need to pick it up. But sometimes once you get over that first one, you've got a lot of exciting stuff coming up. Some big changes that we can't discuss.
I have a big
yet.
announcement.
There's a big announcement to be coming from Mrs. Dana Barrett and the Dana Barrett Show.
Yes.
So you'll have to stay tuned
to
when we air, and we can post it then. But with that, you had to do you had to get out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yeah.
And
so what'd you do?
Well, I literally was having these conversations with myself where I would say, like, you need to pick up the phone and call so-and-so. Oh, God, I really don't want to. Just do it. Pick up the phone. And I would have, my stomach would hurt, and I would just pick up the phone anyway. And then I'd be really proud of myself.
Right.
And
it wasn't as bad as you thought it was.
This is so dorky, but I actually started keeping a log.
Okay.
And I didn't do it long. I only did it like a week or two, but I kept a little log of every phone call, because literally I can email all day long. I can ask in person, but the phone, I don't like it. So I literally kept a phone log, and I would put who I called, and I would try to make at least 5 calls. I think I started with a week, and then I moved it to like a little more, maybe a day, but I would write how I felt. Like before the call, like before I made it, super nervous. And then how I felt during and after.
And I like that.
It actually helped me a lot, because I'd be like calling, XYZ CEO of yada, yada.
Right.
Super nervous. How'd it go? Fine. How'd you feel after? Great.
Good.
Yeah.
Got an appointment, got a sponsor,
Right.
I think we a lot of times the limits are in our own heads. Like we build it up so bad that, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. And, especially for everybody in sales, I'm sure there are a lot of people listening that sales is their primary job. They have to pick up the phone.
Right.
Or go see somebody, or, send an email, but it's just that initial one that gets you.
Here's the worst part of all of this, I think. Unfortunately, some people don't answer. They don't answer an email.
Sure.
They don't pick up the phone. And some people never will. But sadly, calling them 7 times actually works.
Yeah.
Which sucks because I don't want to be that persistent. But I've learned that if you just don't give up, you actually do get what you want.
Persistence does pay off.
Tenacious.
Tenacious. That is the new word to describe Dana and the Dana Barrett Show. Tenacious. So, but that's a good word. I mean, if you really think about it, because you don't want to be called pushy. You don't want to be, I've had people say, "Oh, you're so persistent. Thank you for," and sometimes they'll thank me. Thank you for being so persistent.
Agreed.
Where I'm sitting there going, really? Because the last 87 phone calls I made, I thought I was annoying you. And I wasn't. It was just like, they get busy. They're like, thank you for being so persistent and following up when you said you would, because they forget. I mean, life happens.
Right. I think we also, maybe more as women too, but like, our husbands and, our kids are like, stop bugging me, Mom.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop nudging me. Stop bugging me. And we think of ourselves as annoying when we're just being tenacious or persistent. And I think I told you this story before when we were not on the air, but I was called tenacious by somebody.
You did, yeah.
And like somebody told somebody else, "Oh, that Dana Barrett, she's so tenacious." And I was like, that's the best compliment.
That's a new word. We're going to get you a t-shirt.
Best
Dana.
compliment I ever got, because I was like, okay, wow, I am. And it's a good thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes we tend to deflect compliments a lot. And I remember when I was earlier in my corporate career, I was a deflector. Somebody like, "Oh, you did great on this or great on this." And it was like I had a little shield. Bing, bing. And I had one of my managing partners one time looked at me and goes, "Stop, say thank you."
Yeah.
Walk away. And it was just like, take it in. But I think to be called tenacious, or somebody described me one time, they're like, "She's a powerhouse." I'm like, "Ooh, I like that. That's kind of cool." I felt like a superhero for a minute.
You kind of are.
It's my Wonder Woman persona.
You kind of are a kick-ass powerhouse. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it's it's cool to be told that, and then it also validates it. Okay, those 87 phone calls and 50 emails, or whatever it took to get that, to be tenacious and get that client or that sponsor. What happened is pretty good. So nice. All right. So question for you though is, you also have a big support system, because I remember you talking about when you've had challenges, you're like, I called a friend, said you got to come over. So how important to you is kind of your team and your tribe, and there's other tenacious people out there supporting you?
I mean, that was something I also didn't learn till later. I didn't know I needed that until I got a little bit older, and I built, a really strong connection, network, group of people, friends. And I don't really divide friends and colleagues. I mean, they're sort of all my friends. Like we meet, there are a few people I don't love instantly, but most people I feel like there's a good connection, and, a lot of them have become my good friends, and I think it's hugely important.
Yeah.
Because if you have that network established, then when you do have a problem, they come to be with you. If you're there for them, they're there for you, you know?
And that's where the problem is, what I want to focus on. So that's where I feel like everybody can have a million friends and a million supporters when things are good.
Oh, yeah.
But it's when you just feel like, I just got kicked in the stomach, that you kind of want that group there.
Yeah.
So we're going to pause a minute, and we'll be back in a few to talk a little bit more about that network and what it means to have that group of people, that tribe, to help you push past the limits when you're down and out. Be back in a few. Hey everyone, it's Kristen. Be sure and visit my website at www.andregroup.com. That's www.andreegroup.com. And while you're there, be sure to download my white paper, Top 10 Reasons Your Business Isn't Growing Fast Enough. Now get out there and create your no limits moment. Welcome back, everyone, to the No Limits with Kristen Andre podcast. We are here with Dana Barrett, host of the Dana Barrett Show. And before we took a little pause, we were talking about the people around you and the importance of having those people kind of help when you get to that limit of feeling fearful. I can't talk today. So what have you done? I mean, you in your own life, business and personal, when you've kind of hit that wall where you're up against this limit, like, I am scared to death. have you pulled other people in to help?
I mean, I feel like I've always been really independent. I'm not a big joiner of, groups, and bureaucracies don't work that well for me and all of that. Probably why I'm entrepreneurial and all of those things, and a snark monster. But
it's all right.
But I, that might be my new hashtag, Whitney.
Snark monster.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
But I've had moments where the walls are caving in.
Yep.
Recently, I've had, and this is all part of the upcoming story everyone's going to hear
the
about.
Announcement.
But
yes.
I've had really bad moments, and now I had some bad news recently, and my brain just started firing on all cylinders. Well, oh my gosh, this thing just happened. Now I've got all these things I have to take care of.
Right.
And I couldn't process everything, and so I called one of my friends who came from work, but who has become a good friend, and I said, I need an entrepreneurial brain. Can you just come over and spend a few hours with me and help me prioritize which things and how to handle some of these situations? And she did. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't have, then I knew exactly who to call, and the person that would have time and would be available and had the kind of brain I needed to help me process. Because while calling my mom is always helpful, she just loves me and doesn't really, there's no practical advice, right? It's just like, well, they're bad and you're good and don't you worry, honey, and which is great, but it's not the same as being able to okay, I've got these 4 scenarios. These are things I need to address and deal with to move my business forward.
Right.
How do I do it? And that's really hard, I think, for a lot of CEOs and startups and people who have their own businesses, because there aren't, unless you have built a network of other people who are in that world, you don't have somebody who knows how to help you.
And that's hugely important. I know several of my private clients, when I'm working with them, we're working on business strategy. That's what I deal with them on. But so many times I'm having to get them to hit the pause button just for a second and say, okay, let's take care of this over here. Because if they are so, either it could be from stress, it could be from fear, it could be from just not having an abundant mindset. If they're freaked out, their brain is short circuiting.
Yep.
I mean, it really is. It's going haywire. And unless we can kind of take a step back, and sometimes it's that outside person where you're like, all right, let's flip chart this, let's write it all down, and then kind of get you to kind of see things clearly.
Well, I think you made a really good point, and that is coaches are also good for that. So one way to start that, if you don't have a huge network, is get a coach, because then you have somebody to call.
Fantastic idea, Dana.
Right? I mean, maybe Chris and Andre. It's just a thought.
But it's true, because I have a coach, so I think all coaches should have coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, even Tiger Woods, that's the analogy everybody uses. He's one of the best golfers, probably not the best person to use as an example, but he's always had coaches in different areas. And but if you don't have a coach, or you've got to find those friends and those people in your network that you can call.
Right.
Like you said, you knew exactly who to call that just could bring the brain down and put it all on paper a little bit. So.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. So, all right, question for you. Before the break, we were talking about the fear factor and overcoming fear and kind of keeping a journal. So each episode, we like to issue a challenge to our listeners, just to bring you guys out there in a little bit and have some fun. So we put a group together on Facebook. It's #NoLimitsMoment. So what we want everybody to do, with all the great insight that you've shared and that all our guests share on the show, we want everybody to push through some limit that they have. So I think what you touched on earlier about fear and the fear log is a great idea. So let's issue a challenge to the listeners out there. So what could they do to kind of help push past that?
So for me, the fear I talked about was my phone phobia, I call it. I think I felt like that was a real thing. I think I made that word up, but I really had like a fear of dialing, fear of getting on the phone.
It's a thing with a lot of people that I work with.
Phone phobia. So for me, if that's your fear, then you can use that in your log, but it could be anything. You could create I just opened a Google Doc, Google spreadsheet, and I made a little document, and I just put down each time I overcame that fear. And I set a goal for myself to overcome it a certain number of times a day or a week.
Okay.
Put that down on your fear log, we'll call it. And just each time you accomplish it, write down how you felt before, how you felt during, and how you felt after. And then you can really look at, should I be as afraid of this as I think I am? And also I think knowing that you have a log forces you to do it, because you're you want to put that entry in the log.
Right.
So, and maybe get an accountability partner for that too. Maybe do it with a partner.
I think that'd be a good thing, because everybody's got a fear, and it could be the phone. A lot of people, and we talked about sales before, a lot of people in sales have a fear of the phone. Networking.
Right.
Certainly. It's funny because I'm definitely described as extroverted. And you've been to events with me before. I talk to the people I know. I'm definitely not an extrovert at a networking event. So maybe that's a fear, is go up and talk to 3 people you don't know at an event.
Totally.
I am the last event I was at with you, I talked to you and Whitney the whole time. Two people I knew before I got there.
I've obviously described as an extrovert also, and I do
Yeah.
the same thing. I walk into an event and I think to myself, oh God,
Yeah.
I really don't want to do this. And then I just make myself do it.
Yeah. I don't know if it's a fear.
Discomfort.
But it's just my comfort zone. So maybe that's a good thing. So whether it's a fear of something you need to overcome or something that you just haven't stepped out and try, I think that'd be a great limit.
Yeah.
I like that one. That's cool. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Barrett, with the tenacious idea there. Awesome. All right. So here's the deal to everyone listening. We are going to issue the No Limits Challenge to go out and create a fear log and keep track of whatever you're fearful of or whatever you're having challenges with, how you feel before, during, and after, and then let us know the great results. So you can join us on Facebook at #NoLimitsMoment and share the challenge, how you overcame it, and how you step forward to push past those limits. So until next episode, we'll see you soon.